First rule for the night is time would eventually turn any E into C or D. As Paul Harvey would do. Time would eventually turn any E into C or D. That's not really all of it, but let me stop there. I guess I'll do Paul Harvey one better and do it for the third time. It's time, just the ordinary conception of time back in the city, in the 3D world. The apparent ordinary flow of ordinary time will ultimately take every E, everything that's irrelevant, if you live long enough. Time will live long enough, but if you did, it would take everything that was in E and it will drag it into either C or D, right? Thusly, it is like a new equation. That is, time equals all potential. So, as things work in the city, that also means that all potential would equal time. So, now we're getting somewhere, aren't we? Well, here's where I'm getting. If all of that be true, or at least correct, then if a person could activate lots of new, maybe even all would be the way to make it most dramatic. If a man could activate almost all potential in himself while he was alive, then would he have created for himself new time? Would he have actually created time? Think about it for a second, because a whole lot of you have already answered that. A whole lot of you have sent me notes, made your own observations along these kind of lines. Of sending me a note, sending yourself a note upstairs, pointing out, hey, when you made me go do something weird, new, and other times I can remember to go out and do something just new, just foolish. It seems like, instead of me going out and doing something foolish, it was a waste of time, it seemed like I had more time. Now, see, a lot of you remember telling me that. It's true, if all of this is correct. Let me start over again. Time ultimately will take all of E, any situation, any person, any particular juncture of time and space, anything at that time, if we're talking about now a moment, an hour, something having to do with one occurrence, or your lifetime. So we could look upon everyone's lifetime, if you could see it large enough and fast enough, you could look upon everyone's life, in the city at least, of there being a fairly, to say the least, constant pool of E. The pool of C and D is fairly constant. It appears to them to flip-flop. They jump back and forth from one foot to another. That which they like sometimes, they dislike again the next day. But the actual pool to them of C and D and E, even if they would take E into consideration, stays what might be called, or what I'm going to call, pretty constant. So if you could see on that scale, then I could still tell you that there would be like an E pool lingering, hovering about your entire life. If you live in the city, it's just foregone fact. So what I am proposing to you, or what I'm telling you first before I get to the proposals, is that E would be ultimately transformed by time into C or D in everyone's life, in everyone's consciousness. So, you could then say that time, on that basis of that opening fact, that time has got to equal all potential. Because remember, my E pool is all that is irrelevant. It is all that is not presently activated in either C or D insofar as your perception is concerned. So everything that is not being activated in your life, everything of which you are not conscious, is simply potential. And I've already pointed out, I started out pointing out to you that time would turn all E into either C or D. It would activate everything. Therefore, time equals all potential. And of course, the converse has got to be true. That you take all potential and put it together, and it has got to equal time. Still moving along. Then to my questioning proposal to you. Is it possibly true then that if a man began to activate those parts of himself, those parts of his consciousness, he began to think the unthinkable, feel that which he had never felt, to do that which he should not be doing, would he then not be creating new time? Just creating it. That every time he took potential and chewed it up, turned it in to that which was activated, he turned P into A, would he not have created time? For the sake of you proverbial soreheads, I guess I can point this out, that there would be no great benefit from a sorehead view just to creating time, because a good sorehead could say, boy, that's really what I want is more time. Be like a good old sorehead kissing what I assume he hoped would be a female frog and get his wish, and before he can give it to him, the frog hollers, all right, you're going to live twice as long as you should have. And a good old sorehead say, hey, thanks a lot. Okay. You weren't waiting for that, though. So it would not be, that's the reason I started this little attempted humor, it would not be simply for the sake, per se, of creating new time. Just using time on the basis that most people assume it exists in their ordinary definition. It would have to be that you're creating time on the basis that it is eating up something else. And it would be. And what would it be eating up? That is, if, based upon what I have attempted to drag you through here, if indeed by you activating potential in you, just in your, what seems to be your own personal domain, yellow, blues, and reds, if you are creating what amounts to new time, then it's got to be created out of something. And it's going to be created out of what? All of that which ordinarily to you would seem to be impertinent and irrelevant. That would be the creation of new time. That would be, to put it another way, that more of what seemed to be time to you, your life, was less and less what? All bland. Less and less all, what's the word? Boring. Would that not be new time? Would new time simply be a neutral reality? Is that what people normally think of when they say time? I wish I had more time. When people say there's not enough time, when people say time ran out on me, people do not deal with time on the basis of it being a neutral entity. I guess if you stopped them in mid-thought about something else and asked them if time was either positive or negative, then I assume that most sophisticated people say, well, it's neither. But that is not the way it's used. People do not think to think about time in any kind of neutral way. It's always either in what appears to be a C or D fashion, a positive or negative fashion. And yet if you could create new time, you would not be creating simply time on the basis of, well, if I'm going to activate my potentials and create new time, Jesus, what a gamble, because it may come up bad time. What I was trying to get you to see with this part was it is not simply creating time as people would ordinarily think about time. It would be creating that which now would seem to be eating up more of your life that seemed to have no relevance. How about another way? If I got it turned into an axiom, it appears so. It's a good thing I can make up axioms on the spot. To a real revolutionist, That's too easy. Maybe I'll do it before I finish this paragraph, but how about let's try, you need to do a little more of the work. How about all of the areas that seem to be problems? All the way from what seems to be the serious problems in your city life to just the minor irritants, just the everyday irritations of being a what? Live. All right. I think that we've established, at least to my satisfaction and the kids, that the idea that there are problems apart from man is, speaking physics, in the area of physics, not metaphysics, but in the area of physics, is Einstein shit. We are not dealing with problems apart from man. If anything, we'd be talking about that the problems are a profile or a verbal delineation of what the man is. So if a man could create new time, what I was going to suggest to you here for a second before any possible axiom wrap-up, is he begins to create new time by activating potentials in him that would have heretofore gone unused. To create this new time has got to be made out of something. And the something I am suggesting to you, based upon my opening statement of time will eventually turn all E into C or D, and what the new time would be made out of would be that which is irrelevant, and which I am now suggesting to you is, in truth, problems. I further suggest to you is why some of you who have made some progress along this line of insanity since you've been involved with this, is why you have a feeling, or you have had before I've succeeded in making you ashamed to say it, began to feel that, well, by God, I'll say this, fooling around with you, I don't have the problems I used to have. Now I just got one problem, I guess. I'm bored in a way that I never expected. If that is your only problem, then what have I addressed here initially tonight? Not envelopes, no. Is every time a man activates something new, every time a man does that which he should not do, every time you do that you would have never done, whether you feel like I made you do it, whether I tricked you to do it, or whether I made you do it once and now off on your own at times you can do it, and it's such fun, all the various ways you've tried to tell me, all of you various people. It's so neat, it's so much fun, it's like a small kick in the ass. It makes me feel good for 2 or 3 days. It makes me smile in a way that I'm afraid my face is going to break or that people are going to see me, all of that. And I'm suggesting to you now, amongst other possibilities, I could describe as you are creating new time. Not good time, not bad time. You're creating more time. You're creating more of the fourth dimension of space, or the fourth corner of space. You have more room, you've got more time to move. And by so doing, since I'll go along with Newton and his brothers, that nothing can be created out of nothing. I don't have time to argue with that tonight. I don't have time to straighten out history. But let's say that's true. Then this new time is being created out of something. And so the feelings that you people have, and I don't mean that they are individualized. This is true for everyone going through this. The feelings that, I've used some of your descriptions, you just feel better in a way that can't be bought. You just feel better for no particular reason. What I'm suggesting to you, I can call it creating new time by activating potentials that have been unused and should normally stay unused. You're not only creating new time, but by creating it, the material that you used up to create the new time was all truly, to the revolutionists, truly irrelevant. And everything that's irrelevant to the revolutionists turns out to be, miracle upon miracle, turns out to be the very thing that everybody else calls life. Well, they normally call it trouble, problems, irritations. But it's what everybody else takes as life that they've got to explain away, either from a religious view of man being inherently evil, or from a psychological view that we've all been traumatized. would it be, after all my suggestions, perhaps the only non-suffering people in the world would be real revolutionists. The only people that got no time would be real revolutionists. Or, if you insist, the only people that's got all the time they need and it's meaningless would be revolutionists. But it would be people that could create time anytime they needed it. And all you got to do, remember how I started this, is you have got to activate some potential. Because it is not just game playing, not me just trying to twist words to be didactic, but if time is going to activate all E into D and C, or C, which it will. Remember, I stated that in the beginning. I didn't ask a question. I didn't offer you a rhetorical supposition, even a suppository. No. Time will eventually turn every E into D or C. That's a fact. So if that's true, that's what I started out sort of asking you, trying to get you to participate, then that's going to mean you got a problem? That D has got, that time has got to equal all potentials. That it is an equation. That if you can see it that way, is that all right? That time, and I'm not going to stop now and say whether I actually mean in the city or dragging it out into the bushes, but time would equal all potential. Think about it for a second. It's not even that strange. At least on the basis of people in the city. Everybody arguing about what is time. Physicists, metaphysicists, philosophers. But one acceptable definition would be time equals all potential. You got to admit, I got them there. And of course, if that's true, then all potential, put it together, equals time. So therefore, if you can create, if you can execute potential, then you are executing, that is, you are producing, you are creating, in a sense, time for yourself. And if all that be true, then when I got to the end there, I was trying to get you to see, then if that is true, then you are creating time at the expense of something. God, what a psychiatrist I would make. Really. Except there's only a handful of potential patients in the world. Here and the few in the other cities, that's it. Or not if a psychiatrist throws you. What a doctor, just a family physician I would make. Except my potential cache of patients, I wouldn't even keep me in tongue depressors. But those I did have, and you could come in with everything this side of cancer of the nose, just dealing with run-of-the-mill problems. Well, seems as I got some laughs while ago when I reached over here and leaned that you people were expecting. You know, just because we built this, and I keep throwing these little jokes, doesn't mean that all the time it's going to get used. But it is tonight. I'll let Dana write that to save me from dragging all of our little minds through my Latin so you can see it. And the translation is, those not present are always wrong. Or as Paul Harvey would say, those not present are always wrong. Now, whether you agree with me or not, that is, I can't say a well-known, but it's a known proverb in the city because I didn't make it up. It's not original. So back in the city, it doesn't take a great leap of intellectual octane to see what was surely the horizontal basis for this. That is, if you've got some people and they're discussing something, and mainly what do people discuss? Other people, but anything. Those who are not there are on the losing end of any argument. Those not there, if they're being talked about, then what's being said about them goes unresisted. Those not present are always wrong. Okay. That would seem to have at least some, maybe not totally cynical, but some little significance. It does fit into being a memorable or rememberable proverb or maxim from the city. All right. That, of course, is not the extent of our interest in it. Let me put it to you this way. If you take the proverb, if you take the idea internally, then take the me's, that is, in you, that are not momentarily in speaking control. In other words, they're not the ones saying this. Those me's are always what? Wrong. That is the aspects of everyone, those me's, those not present, those not in the speaking throne right now, those not saying that, those not hearing that and going, yes. All of the me's in your we's that are not present right now are always in the wrong. They are the me's that seemed destined to be changed, corrected. Anything in you, any neural pattern that calls itself by your name, that right this second is not in speaking control, is not present, and they're always wrong. Whoever, whatever me and your we, is in speaking control right now, has the feeling within my second order that I mentioned last time of the equation of I plus not I equals everything, look at as being in here plus out there equals everything. And now instead of us apparently talking about a person and everything outside of a person's skin, all of the equations taking place inside, then whoever is in charge right then, whoever is in speaking control, feels like they're the in here. And everything that's not right then is out there. Outcast. Those not present, and they are wrong. Who is there to defend them? Now that is not just a verbal joke either, of saying who is there to defend them. If we take the proverb right quick and we jump back outside in the city and say, those not present are always wrong, and you got this past picture of a group of people, Roman senators, churchmen of the Middle Ages, a crowd of guys sitting around a bar right now, and they're talking about somebody else, some other person. That person is always wrong. And I can say they're always wrong for one reason, one obvious reason, is there is no one there to speak for them. Because there's only one person to speak for you, and that's you. There's no one there to defend them. If they're not there, they're always wrong. You can say anything about somebody not there. You can say, hey, you know so-and-so, yeah. Did you know he dresses in his wife's underwear every Saturday night? That's why you don't see him. Everybody laughs. Shame on him. And he is wrong. Nobody questions. There is nobody to defend him. All right. Let's jump back from there into serious life, what we're talking about. In a person, in you, whoever is not in speaking control right this moment is in the wrong, always. And when I say that there is no one there to defend them, it's not simply that the guy, to jump back outside now to the bar, that's being accused of some, as they look at it, sexual perversion, some weirdness, it's not simply that he physically is not there to say, no, it's not true, no, it's not true. Because it may be true, and if he was there to say, no, it's not true, all these ordinary people, the things may be wired up for them to hear him say, yes, it's true, but why'd you bring it up? How'd you know? Not that kind of defense. Not to say there's no one there to defend him. There is no one there. There is no force there. There is no energy there to promote that energy, to promote that view, There is no force there to promote itself. Now jump back internally. Whoever's in speaking control in you finds fault with whatever, if it's brought to their attention, to its attention. That somebody else we don't like in us, bad habits, bad attitude, whatever it is, that amounts to those not present, and they're always wrong. And so when I say there's no one there to defend them, it's not that if you could be conscious of both of them simultaneously, that the other would defend itself. That's not what I mean by defend. The other could not defend itself. If it could defend itself, it would not have been attacked. This is along the same line, one or two of you that got it some weeks back, is ordinary people do not learn from their mistakes. If they could learn from their mistakes, they wouldn't have made the mistake. Because to them, it's not a mistake. And just because they did it and something apparently adversely happened, like somebody caught them and put them in jail or kicked their ass, that don't mean they learned anything. They learned don't get caught. But if they could, as humanity puts it in the city, if they could in truth have learned from that mistake, they would have learned it before they executed the mistake. If those not present in you at any given time, those that are always wrong, those aspects of you, those attitudes, those feelings, those patterns of behavior, those acts of behavior that apparently are outcast and to be corrected and changed, when I say if there's no one there to defend it, it's not suddenly that habit jumps in there and says, wait a minute, you got me all wrong or you're exaggerating it. It's not that. It's that it cannot be defended. Not that it per se is wrong. Like the old it's not malum per se. It's not that there are things evil in themselves. In the law, it was referred to as being two aspects of malum per se or malum prohibitum. That things are either, and that you had your possibility back in the city, in the legal institutes, that there were things that were wrong or bad because that they were bad within themselves. But then there were things that were bad and evil because us humans passed laws and said they were. To the real revolutionist, there really is, from his own view, not from me theorizing this for you, not from you adopting it, but there really is nothing evil or malum per se. There is nothing that is simply evil in itself. There are things that may be D right now within a certain circumstance, but that does not mean within themselves they are wrong. You remember where we started, where I was? So the parts of you, those that were not present, those that are not present right now and are wrong, and those that are obviously to the one in you that is present now and speaking, sees them as being wrong. If they were there simultaneously, it is not that they could defend themselves. They can't defend themselves. There is nothing to defend. They simply are. But in the lineal society, which is the city, if they're not there, they're always wrong. That is a fact. That's not a psychological fact. That's a scientific fact. And I don't have time to make up a pseudo-scientific equation. Not pseudo-scientific, a super-scientific equation. Plus, I didn't misspeak. All right, so if everybody's got along this far, then I've got to start asking the questions. It's test time now. How to use this information, assuming anybody understood any of it. As always, we have, I suggest to you, two immediate possibilities, them being the opposite and them being the same thing. But it's for people, some of you are left-handed and some of you are right-handed. Plus some of you are women and some of you are men, so we need two possibilities, and some of you are tall and some of you are less tall. Some of you have middle names and some of you don't. Some of you have middle names that are acceptable and some of you have middle names that make you want to laugh and go out in the woods. So, since everything is always here is divided up into two possibilities, we've got two needs. So, as always, I point out to you the two possible ways to approach using this information. That is, those not present are always wrong. Religions would crumble were it not for that. If you're going to have somebody wrong, they can't be there, because if they're there, then they can stay there. And if they stay there, they're no longer wrong. Now, we've been through that. I thought you people remember that. Attila the Hun. Pepin the short, fat, and ugly. They can be, by all reports, living ogres. Until when? Until they take over. And then, by God, you got a different story. Then it's, hello, Mr. Pepin. Hello, sire. How are you? How beautiful it is to see a man of your short size like a man should be. Whoever's in control is right. Whoever's in control is beautiful. Whoever's in control you approve of. And I don't mean just out there. Hell with that. Whoever's in here you approve of. Even if you're the ordinary person back in the city that says, I hate myself. That's just talk. If you hated yourself, you wouldn't be yourself. Back to the question of how might you use this. Everybody not present is wrong. Whoever's not present at you at any given time is wrong, wrong, wrong. Were that not so, you would have no desire to change. You wouldn't have been attracted to this, as far removed as it proved to be, from self-improvement. Most of you dazzled you and misdirected you to the point that you forgot it. But originally you thought this was going to make you a better person. And now most of you have invested so much and you've gone so far, hell, you're not a better person, it's too late. But you're becoming a different person. All right, how might one use the information? The fact that those not present are always wrong. The two ways. One would be to get everybody together simultaneously. To stop, to cease that ordinary situation in you wherein somebody's here and a whole bunch of people aren't, or at least somebody's not. Is you got to stop it. That's one way. To where there is no people here, those here, things here, processes here, and then those that are not. If you could do that, then we've killed it. It's not wounded. We have killed it. If you can get them all there simultaneously and hold them there, then taking the rule, which I accepted, that those present are always wrong. If you stop the situation of having those not present in you, that at any given time there is no those not present, then it follows that there can be no one wrong. You would have no complaint with any part of yourself. That's the easy linear description of it. It's much more than that, of course, because it goes into another dimension. But you would have no conflict. The other way would be this. That there is no one actually in charge. So then it's not a matter of merging those here and those not there. To simultaneously always keep them together so that there cannot be any not there. And if you can't have any not there, then you can't have any wrong, based upon that scientific equation, formula. Then the other side of it is, take the beginning. Those not present are always wrong. That, of course, is inferring, as is safe in a precise scientific statement like that, that those that are present are right. At least they're not non-wrong. They're non-wrong. So those present, what if you could do away with there being a difference between those present and those not? What if you could operate in such a way that by all linear observations, all 3D investigations, when you got down to it, there's no one actually in charge. Okay, it's time for a vote. Which one do you like best? On a revolutionary level, what might we conclude to be the thing the action that would most closely resemble, back in the 3D world, sin, evil? Now, inasmuch as they are real short on information, imperfect data, therefore as useless to revolutionary activity as any other information from the city. Even though that be true, it does reflect something. And humanity talks about it forever, and I keep coming back and bouncing off of it and trying to create other reflections from it. But there is something worthwhile for me to spend a little bit of time to start off with their descriptions of it. That ought to cover it. You know what I mean somewhere in there. You know what your own nervous system means, what the historical nervous system of humanity means. That they believe that there is real sin. Malum per se, not malum prohibitum. Not something that's wrong just because the New York or California or Florida legislature got together and they passed a law saying that it's wrong to sell someone a condominium when you know that you're not ever going to cut the grass. Let's just say. Then you can say, all right, there's a wrong. For those living in the condominium on the 14th floor and the grass is up to their window, they can say, hell, it's evil. But based upon the historical dichotomy, that is not malum per se. It's just wrong because humans got together and said it's wrong once it seemed to come to their attention. But humanity has always believed, including you, back in your old lower parts of your nervous system, that there is malum per se. Usually things like murder, to think about. But at any rate, I don't need to limit it to any act. But it reflects something, is what I'm trying to get your attention toward tonight in a particular way. And there is a way in which I can describe a thing, an action, even to a revolutionary, that comes closest to what people in the city think they mean when they talk about sin, evil, malum per se. And it would be this, I'll put it to you in one word: denying. You remember what old Kyrut, I let him say, been several months ago. I'm not going to try to quote it. There's a real figure of speech. I don't remember what it was exactly, so I can't exactly quote it. I guess it sounds better to go, I'm not going to try exactly to quote it like I was, had it up here and I was going to paraphrase it more to my liking. I don't remember exactly how it went. So, but here was the gist of it, is that if a real revolutionist were asked, do you believe in this? Or somebody else say, do you believe in that? Referring to almost anything, religion, philosophy. Do you believe in this? Do you believe in that? The revolutionist, were he to answer, his answer would be, I believe in everything. The closest, in the revolutionary sense, to the 3D concept of evil, of sin, of seriously missing the mark of what a man should be doing, would be in denying. For a real revolutionist to say, well, all right, I believe in what none of you guys talked about. Even some of it seems to be in direct conflict. But this one part. Now that would be, of course, an example of what would seem to be taking place between in here and out there. of a real revolutionist, denying something that someone said, denying their belief, denying something that life has said through another person. You got me thus far? That I could say that from a real serious view, a real revolutionary view, that an enlistee, a would-be revolutionist, actually denying anything that seems to be out there would approximate what city folks believe to be malum per se, real evil, that he denies something. Now this is an expansion, and it's slightly moved from simply criticizing. It's to deny it. A serious matter. That no. Now there is something to be gotten from that, or I wouldn't be talking about it. But now, as always, let's go into a more profitable neighborhood. What is the closest evil, the closest thing to approximate evil that you could do to yourself? No, I didn't do that. Well, if I did that, I didn't mean to do that. Well, if I did that, my unconscious made me do that. If I did that, it was an accident. You just thought I did that. No, you people thought I said that. I didn't say that. Wait a minute. You remember what I said yesterday? Let me back up a minute. I want to make sure. I fear that you may have misunderstood. It is any attempt to explain oneself is to deny oneself. Any attempt to explain what one thought, what one said, what one felt, is to deny what one said, what one thought, what one felt. And you are seriously approaching. This is insanity back in the city. It is non-linear reality. But for those that can understand it, to deny in yourself, you are approximating, you are approaching what they reflect in the terms evil and sin back in the city. You're beginning now to approach a reflection of it, but it is multi-dimensioned, more so than in the city. In other words, of course, I'm inferring to you it's even worse. This has nothing to do with a person altering their behavior, even a revolutionist. It has nothing to do with if when you started this you had the habit of once every 2 or 3 months of drinking battery acid to get high. It would be well within expectations, within the parameters of reasonable expectation, even in the bushes, for me to think after some length of exposure to me and my wisdom that you would cease that habit. If you insist to deny it, that I don't believe I'll do that anymore. Of course, if you went about the right way, you wouldn't tell me, you wouldn't tell you. Once you saw it, what are you going to say? Wouldn't you be embarrassed to tell yourself that I've become so enlightened now, I think I'm going to quit drinking battery acid? Jesus. If you could stand to do that, I'd have to suggest to you that it would whip you back in to your city ways faster than if your ass was tied to a 2-foot wide rubber band. A man's got no business humiliating himself, a revolutionist. That is, we're back to this all-encompassing rule I give you, you shouldn't be talking about yourself. So what I'm talking about right now, what I'm trying to sketch, has nothing to do with actual change of behavior. It has nothing to do with expanded thought. It has nothing to do with more precise control of feelings. A closer involvement in the chemical lab that nips at your heels unknowingly most of the time. But what we're talking about is to deny what is. When you deny what is, you have, I don't know how many eyes you're going to have left, but you have, once again, taken a beautifully dangerous stick and you have punched out an eye again. It seems to regenerate itself every morning when you get up and you've got a sufficient number to do it some more. But every time you deny it, every time you excuse yourself, every time you explain yourself, every time you do interviews, every time you do rewrites, every time you do windows, you are denying yourself. And remember, I changed it now. I went from talking out there. I'm not saying, because that's child's play. You people should know better now than to talk about yourself and to go do interviews. I'm talking about now with you. Between you and those not present, those dirty bastards. Those sides of me that are not involved with this. Those sides of me that are still holding on to the past and arguing with my mother. Those sides of me, just everybody that's not here right now. Fuck them. That's the whole point of not having some of us here. Those not present are always wrong. If everybody was here all the time, nobody could be wrong. The people in the bar, they cannot. Unless there's somebody not there to be wrong, nobody can be wrong. Either that or they're all going to fall upon each other's throats. They're all going to whip each other's ass. So you got to have somebody not there to have somebody wrong. If nobody would be denied, you would not have the existing absolute chemical dichotomy of there being a you, of there being something that is worthwhile, and something that is not you. Perhaps I don't have to go much further with this, but if any of you still had any notion that you in some way had done something wrong, that you had any possibility of doing things wrong, if you had the general sensation, if it did not come to your consciousness on the basis of it being wrong, that it was just an irritant, it was a part of life, but at better moments it may have seemed to be you as opposed to out there, that simply was not up to acceptable standards. Were it not for the fact of it being denied, I am dealing without any doubt now in an ACB. It sounds like it's possible. It sounds as though it is literally possible in the world, and yet it's not. But if you could do that, if you could work at it in that manner, then all the feeling that something is wrong, whether it seems to lend itself to a verbalization to you or not, but the general sensation that something is wrong, I'm suggesting to you, would no longer be possible. That all the general feelings of there being sin, of there being the possibility that you can do serious wrong, that you have done serious wrong, would disappear. But notice how insane this is. It is even worse than diametrically insane to the city, because in the city it is believed by everybody. You don't have to be Catholic, you don't have to be religious, but everybody believes that no one would improve without understanding the areas in which they need to be improved. That no one would be more humane unless they understood that in some areas I am less than absolutely humane. In other words, there are parts of me that by God do need cleaning up. Oh, I'll admit in my case, I'm darn near perfect compared to most people. But Jesus, I'm not going to be absolutely covered by the shingles of hubris. I will admit there are a few things in my act that need to be cleaned up. Now, of course, that's all it takes is a few things. All it needs is one. And you're in the city, because as long as you've got one not present, then there you are. It's varying degrees. You might be then closer. It wouldn't be your doing. But to keep the conversation going, you might be then just automatically, mechanically closer to actually being in rapport with life than to being resigned to it or being resentful of the way in which you're wired up. I'm going to leave it, but I'll leave it with what I was started out describing this as being, that the closest verbalization, the closest reality that I can give you of an area that seems to be of continuing supreme importance and of interest to people in the city, to ordinary humanity, that of there being some form of evil, some form of actually doing wrong, On the revolutionary level, the closest manifestation there would be in denying that anything that is not true, it doesn't exist, it's crazy, it's your imagination. You shouldn't do that, you shouldn't say that, you shouldn't think that. In theory, people should have never thought that. In theory, in general theory, people should have never said this. They should have never been this kind of movement historically. They should have never been this kind of artistic undertaking by some number of people, one or more. They should have never been this kind of music produced. They should have never been this kind of art, this kind of literature. No, it serves no purpose, at the very least. At the very worst, it may be damaging to humanity. That, as I said, normally with people, what appears to be out there seems to be the easiest one to exemplify. But there is a reality to it internally, personally, of denying. Denying. The real revolutionist, I know how crude this can sound, but if he were really forced, or if he forced himself to respond to, well, do you believe in this? Do you believe in that? What do you believe in? Of course, the question, what do you believe in, assumes there's a contrast. To believe in something, there's got to be things you don't believe in. And so the question can arise, not just specifically of do you believe in this, but what do you believe in? And if he did answer, even just to himself, the answer is, I believe in everything. And it's not a joke. It would not be a BB shot into atomic warfare. It would be serious. It would only be serious to him, only he would understand it. I believe in everything. But he would be using believe also in a four-dimensional sense, not just in the way in which somebody may have asked him of do you believe in this, or what do you believe in? Because what he is saying is, I affirm everything. Because, of course, only somebody of less perception, only somebody limited to city consciousness thinks that there's some things that do not actually exist. Oh, sure, there's things we've got names for, and there's things that some people say exist, but they don't. I deny it. All reasonable people deny it. There's some people that say that this is a proper thing or an acceptable thing to do, and it may exist, but I deny that it's acceptable. Me and lots of other right-thinking people. The real revolutionists would affirm it all, not on the basis of morality. Morality is only true back in the city. Morality is only true as long as you're limited to C and D. Things are being cut down so that things are being born. Things are being destroyed so that something new is being erected. So we're not talking about morality. The real revolutionist would not have any conception, no perception, no consciousness of denying anything. That is, saying it does not exist, it serves no purpose, it should not be here. You've got to understand hubris. I should make up a new word to combine hubris with silly. Which of course it is, but in the specific way of people denying things, that no, nay, nay, nay. Humanity does not need that. You understand, that is not just simple hubris, not from a revolutionist view. Right in the city, it's not of any great consequence. But it's not simply hubris of saying, well, which I could say, that, well, there is hubris because for somebody to say, well, this shouldn't happen, if they're religious, then they have usurped God, their God. Because, hell, he did it. If we're going to use the standard concepts of religious guides, and here we have somebody saying we shouldn't do this. That's why I say that hubris, there should be another word for us. It's not only hubris, it's just downright silly. It's not dangerous, it's not blasphemous. It's just, well, you know how things are back in the city. I love it. The real revolutionist would believe in everything. Absolutely. Actually believe in it. He would never discuss this, and he knows it's not true on the 3D level. On the 3D level, he doesn't believe in everything because it's not everything at the 3D level. The truth be known, if he'd really responded and they said, do you believe in such and such, he'd say, yeah, I believe in the part you see of it. And he could say, I don't want any part of the way it manifests itself on this level. But if you saw all of the connection, if you saw it with one more dimension, then you'd know why I can affirm it. Or at least why I don't deny it. I repeat, he would never get involved with this because he would be speaking in a way that everything that he said was only coming out 3/4 of it at best. But if you knew what I was talking about, if he knew what he was doing, then the truth would be, if somebody said, do you believe in such and such, the answer is always, yeah, because there's no choice. If the 3D world, if life in the 3D world can produce this thing, or even if you don't personally see it or experience it, if it can produce in a human, it describes, hey, here's such and such, here's my new idea, here's a philosophical theory a group of us have, here's a religious tenet that a bunch of people that I know got together and we made it up, or we believe it's true, here it is, do you believe in it? And he hears it for the first time. He got no choice. You don't stop and think, let's see, do I believe in that? You believe in everything because you don't deny anything. There is nothing to deny in the 3D world. The only thing to deny, if you wanted to do it, was you'd have to deny that that's all there is to that. And you'd have to ask Peggy Lee, let's go on home, because that is not all there is to that. But that's the way it looks there. I'll repeat again tonight. I can slip into this, but here's a good chance to repeat. If any motto should still be foremost on your list, if any one idea should be tattooed still on the inside of your left thigh for a while, for a good length of time, would be the one that nothing is true from every view, but everything is from some. It's going to be a long time, if ever, that you're going to outgrow that. There'll be a long time, if ever, that you will drain every drop from that. But, having managed to weasel that one back in, it also lets me expand upon it some, in a slightly different direction. Let's call it a minor update. And that would be, here's the minor update. Instead of just the axiom, well, it's a scientific rule of nothing is true from every view, but everything is from some, would be the TAL-TB-SFTVA method. And that is, there's a lot to be said for that view, all right. Now, still expanding. How about a dastardly, a death-defying tag team combination of the, if you remember, the look method. And I said that if everyone understood it correctly, that you could wrap up all of this. If you wanted to say, all right, there is a method, and the method is this. Just listen to what I say. Don't try to throw in any metaphysical cherries or shredded nuts on top of this. Here it is the method is, just look. All right. This death-defying tag team combination would be the look method in conjunction with the yoo-hoo technique. I'm sure that at least half of you assume I'm going to explain that, and the other half of you hope I am. So I are. I stole the term. There used to be this kid some years ago that hung around my house, or where I was living at the time. And first off, let me point out, it came to my attention after a while, he was the only child, it was a male child, no great significance, but he was the only child, it turned out, in the 4th grade in elementary school that beat up 2 school guards, 2 adults simultaneously at the same time. He took them both home. So first let me tell you that. And that's when he was whatever you are, it was the 4th or 5th grade. In other words, he was about 7 years old. It turns out, at times I have looked back and feared that perhaps I let him hang around me too much at that time. But at any rate, I'm not going to take all responsibility, but I'll open myself up for some responsibility. I knew him there for a period of time, and he started doing this thing. Remember what I'm talking about, his attitude and his size and the way he looked, that he could beat up several adults on a bad day. But then he started doing this thing. I started seeing him do it with kids, and then I'm afraid I sort of laughed, or I in some way, at least I didn't deny him, and he expanded into a few adults. And the thing he started doing was he would just suddenly turn on people. And he'd holler, yoo-hoo. I've never tried to imitate him, so maybe I better explain it more, because it would infuriate people. Sometimes I'd let him get in my car, and I'd be driving to the store somewhere, and they'd let him ride with me. And he started doing this. There'd just be a bunch of kids out there doing, serious kid stuff, playing ball, or one kid standing there bouncing a basketball. And here he is, and he would look out the window, and he'd go, yoo-hoo. But he'd do it in such a way that kids they didn't know what. And I obviously must have laughed or done something, because then he would pull up, I'd be with him, and we'd pull up to stop at a traffic light, and there'd be adults there doing adult things, waiting on buses and leaning on umbrellas, holding the paper, just doing normal things. And he would look at them and go, yoo-hoo. And they would really get mad. Well, not all of them would get mad. Some of them would suddenly stumble and trip, and they weren't walking. They're just standing there, and he'd holler, yoo-hoo, and they'd suddenly go. All right. I still have not, and they would really get mad. Well, not all of them would get mad. Some of them would suddenly stumble and trip, and they weren't walking. They're just standing there, and he'd holler, yoo-hoo, and they'd suddenly go. All right. I still have not, I'll admit it, I can tell it, I have not emotionally, I have not through any blue circuit activity given you a good representation of what that little kid was doing. But I assume I explained enough that here's a case that I tried to make the yellow circuit words make up for it. That you hear generally my description, and you take my word for the fact that really, people were falling down, people were just suddenly, grown-ups looking, and they would look at me. They wouldn't look at him, but they'd look at me like, you son of a bitch, you got a car and I'll kill you. I'll whip your ass. So we'll assume, based upon your laughter, at least here in the studio audience, that I have made this, I've conveyed something sufficiently for me to press on. That is now, I stole it, but I'm referring as the yoo-hoo method. I don't know much what else to say. It's got to be in combination to be done right. First, you got to look. Then you got to use the technique, and you do know, of course. The kid keeps insisting that I just point out the obvious, but we're not talking about dealing with other people now. We're talking about dealing with those that are not present, those waiting on a bus, those apparently separate from the person about to use this technique. So first you got to look and realize that apparently, right now, inside there are those that are not there. There are those that are not in your car. There are those standing out there on the street corner waiting on a bus because you see them in you. But they are not to me right now in talking charge. Look at those smart alecks, pretentious as hell. I don't like the way they act. Is then, once you have looked and you realize there's some that are not actually here, there's some that are not in talking charge right now, and then you go, yoo-hoo. I know periodically I preface things such as last week of saying I've had hesitation over bringing this up. I know I've said it before. In this case, it's not so much hesitation that I never brought up before. It's, oh, I don't know. But just remember the look method and then the woohoo technique. I wish I'd filmed the kid. Or maybe if it becomes that important, if enough of you let me know that you feel like you're on the verge of some major breakthrough, but there seems to be something lacking, next time, I guess maybe I'll go out in the backyard or somewhere and I'll practice a little bit, and maybe I can do it a little bit better. But when it's done right, it was almost miraculous. The severe and immediate inflammation it caused other people. And of course, I'm suggesting to you it is far beyond any mechanical, much less juvenile run of sarcasm. Not that in the 3D world they could not have analyzed it as being partly that. But the yoo-hoo technique, when you start pushing it past that level, which I'm suggesting to you is possible, it is a almost death-defying combination with the look method. Well, let's move to something that I can be a little more specific about. In the city, throughout the history of man, there has been an idea, a notion, a theory, in fact, or a belief, ranging somewhere within there, that in politics, what is right is whatever succeeds. And a corollary, or else a subclause to that sentence, would also be that total lies are acceptable if they totally succeed. Now, I didn't make that up. I may have paraphrased it, but that notion, that belief has been around as long as men have been congregating in cities and have combined into the body politic. That lies are acceptable, total lies are acceptable if they totally succeed in their purpose in politics. To the revolutionist, this is correct, but far beyond any notion of out there politics. Take the last part of the sentence. Let me deal with it. Not the what's right is always that which succeeds. Lies, just as they're called in the city, as they were intended in that maxim. Total lies are totally acceptable if they totally succeed in their purpose. Of course, if we were going to use 3D thinking right quick, I could point out to you, if they're total lies, that means they were totally accepted, and therefore no one knows that they were lies. You could say the only person that ever knew it was lies was the political, the king, the prime minister, the tyrant. Whatever individual or individuals concocted the lies. Because if they totally succeed, no one knows their lies. Am I right? When I'm right, even the kids have got to admit I'm right. Well, at least one thing, as confusing as some of this will be, at least I'm glad this has got nothing to do with the fact, or hell, its name, a fact, Jesus. With that damn question about what's the difference in making people believe that you can do something and actually being able to do it. At least I'm glad there's no connection. I'm glad we got that out of the way weeks ago, because I didn't even want to mention that again. But the real revolutionist would know that total lies are totally acceptable if they totally succeed has nothing, insofar as his use of it, to do with out there. That is what everybody in the city calls, well, lies are something that one person tells another. You can't even have a lie without two people. Yeah, that may be true in the 3D world. The revolutionist knows that he could go into hermit mode out in the bushes and the flow of so-called lies not cease at all. Who cares what other people, it's fine, I don't even deal with it. It falls into the area, I guess, that city people call morality, but I don't even talk about lying. And I guess I've had some kind of good effect on you people. Nobody hardly ever asks me anymore unless they've just seen one or two tapes, had the nerve to send me a letter, want to know about lying. People don't even mention it. I don't even think about it. Not in that sense. Because in that sense, it doesn't exist. It's just more imperfect data. It's irrelevant. Or as we philosophically out in the bushes always like to say, what difference does it make? We're not talking about somebody lying one person to another. It's just, that's just a great manifestation of E. The lying I'm inferring is somewhere else. I don't guess that's any great mystery. In this great land of binary odds, if I say it's not there, then what's your choice? It's here. So lies that are totally acceptable are those that totally succeed. How could that be used? Again, I want to make sure I made this clear to you. This has nothing whatsoever to do with that silly question about, I tried to remember whatever the hell of what difference would there be in making somebody believe that you actually had some ability, and whether you, I know it's just an act, or whether you actually had that ability. Of course, those not present, not only are they always wrong, but they don't know what ability you got. And conversely, as long as you've got people not present, you never know. There's always incomplete data. Just because those are not present are those that you find to be outcast, those that you don't like, that does not mean that their opinion, their abilities, everything about them, that does not mean that that's of no account. Well, none of you still believe that. They are part of you. Who are you going to make believe? Remember, this got nothing to do with this. But who would you try and make believe that you had certain abilities that you don't actually have? Well, not those present right now, if there's more than one, because they know better. They're the ones in speaking control right now, and they're the ones asking the question about who are we going to fake off, who are we going to lie to. So they've already established they can't lie to themselves. So they got to lie to those not present, which is another way of looking at why they're always wrong. So you got to lie to them. But what if you can make them think that you've got abilities that you don't actually, whatever the hell this means, have? What's the difference if you can make them believe it? According to that political maxim back in the city, there is no difference. That total lies are totally acceptable if they totally succeed. One other thing, I absolutely hate these little short maxims. I don't know where the hell I get them. I make them, most of them I just read and I try to pass them off like I've made them up. But this thing about fake it till you make it. Jesus, I'm glad that has no bearing, that was just something funny, and I assume all of you forgot it. Because faking it would be the epitome of a what? A lie. Jesus. So what if you made those not present believe that you could do things that you can't actually do? What if you made them believe it? I guess I better stop that, except for this. Now, I mean this just as totally funny and just as close to a lie. It's just the holiday spirit still overcoming me, and I still wonder, not being Christian, why the holiday spirit, there must be another one. I must be secretly celebrating something. Here it is. It means nothing. What if you could engage in the total fabrication, the all-encompassing lie, from your liar to the lies in you, that you understood everything? That not only have I, at least non-physically, written the book How Things Actually Work. Not only that, but you're one of the few people that have had access to it. You read it, and immediately there it was. That you understand it all. Now, I'm being silly. I'm in fact lying, or as close as possible. So don't take this as having any significance whatsoever. I don't know how you could, because it's irrational, it's illogical, and it's insane. But what if you could take those not present, the people in you, and whoever's talking now, whoever's in talking control, whoever's the powers that would be in you that could do this, and you could announce to the people. Maybe you have to announce more than once, maybe more than 1,000 times. Maybe I don't know how you deal with your people. Whether you got to drive a 49 Hudson through the streets with a $2 bullhorn on the top over and over telling them this. Whether you got to drug them, whether you got to starve them, whether you got to frighten them right through with a Hudson also, and guns pointed out of every window along with the message. I don't know. I mean, there are too many cities for me to worry about this. There are too many people. But what if you could make the people believe that you understood it all? On this kind of basis, that I'm no longer in any kind of learning position. Oh, I don't know. I guess I like hearing him talk, and sometimes he gives a slightly different twist, and it's kind of entertaining. But when it comes to actually knowing how life works, you people hadn't been watching. Say you to the people. You hadn't been watching. Because I hadn't been rubbing your face into it. I hadn't made all that, much of a drastic change in the last 5 to 8 years. But I know how things work, including you people. I know how it works. What if you could make them believe it? Think about it. Think about it. What if they believed it? If you could perpetrate total lies that were totally successful and thus totally acceptable, not to be denied, I would submit to you that this might be the most rousing verse in a revolutionist's personal anthem. That you might then have a resounding flag-waving verse to your own theme song. And what I was mentioning last time about jazz thinking is not only in regards to, I'm slightly shifting if you're not following. I was referring back to some of last time. Jazz thinking would not only be in enlarging, and not only be in improvising upon your established repertoire, which is how I started out last time, if you recall, describing jazz thinking. But just in case I didn't push it far enough verbally for all of you last time, you have got to go past that point soon and actually enlarge your catalog of tunes. You have got to drag in those not present and listen to them sing. You've got to take the songs that you've never listened to, or the songs that you have heard pieces of and you don't like. They have got to become part of your fake book. They have got to become part of your Looney Tune catalog. It is a matter of attempting to push, to carry this picturization further, you've got to be able to push yourself musically on a larger and larger scale, or else you perish. You end up dying intellectually. You end up being captive of your own lie. Not the lie, not the absolute, acceptable, successful lie, but the lie that's the basis of this. The lie that there's part of me that's right and there's part of me that's wrong. There's part of me that's in here and there's part of me that's not here. There's part of me that's in talking control, and then there's some that are not present. And it's a good thing, because I don't like them, and I know you don't. Everything about me that you don't like, we don't have time to go into it, but I know if you named it, I can tell you this, those parts of me are not here right now. Hey, is that wonderful or what? Find me an example, find me an exception. Find yourself an exception. When have you ever stood there toe-to-toe, face-to-face with a you that's talking, that's in talking control, and said, boy, there are parts of me that we don't like, and you have to agree. When has it ever been the one talking? Never. Never. It's impossible. You have got to be able to expand after you have learned that you can improvise, that what you currently seem to have been born thinking, singing, that you can improvise on it. You have got to. You found out for a fact, all of you, I'll go ahead and we'll assume this, that all of you know, at least in the red circuits, that doing something differently, expanding yourself, pushing yourself, has benefits. It creates a milieu that is conducive, far beyond either building up muscles or losing weight or looking better, much more than that. And let's say that all of you know that you firmly taste, through some experiences back in the blue areas, of trying not to be depressed, trying simply not to feel the way you always feel, trying not to feel the same things toward the same people over and over, seems to create new energy, seems to almost create time. But in what would appear to be the yellow areas, that's why I start off talking about jazz, thinking of taking the neural, the chemical activities, the patterns that has passed for being your thought, of being you in the city, and improvising on it. To start off and have to take what you've got, that the only songs you know seem to be the ones that were in the fake book you were given when you were born. Here's your hymnal, here's yours. But then, after that, you have got to, you can't go forever just improvising on your present repertoire. You have to push it. You have to bring those not present into presence. You have to take what apparently inside of you is out there and bring it all to where it's in here, or else it's all out there. You have got to merge the contrast. You have got to cease denying one of them, one the other, it doesn't matter which. A person should always be striving to think as big as possible. You should. You first, of course, have to realize that you can think bigger than you do. As soon as you get a glimpse of that, which isn't all that hard once I've given you that description verbally, is you can see that in a real sense, you think real small. You don't think about it that way, but all you got to do is realize that I could think bigger about anything. And then you realize I think small all the time. If you just walk in a store and you say, where's the bread? The guy said, it's in the milk department. Where do you think it is? All right, you think, if you're an ordinary person, you think what you think. You think, well, fuck you. You smart aleck, no wonder this market doesn't have any more business, or whatever it is you think. But then if you remember to think bigger. And so rather than just think about what he did, you try and think bigger about Jesus. And if I had to work in a slime joint like this 20 hours a day with a threat of a hold-up all the time, that would probably be, for me, good behavior. You do know I'm not attempting some kind of rationalization, as they call it in the city. I was just, or you might. Another way, to think big would be to turn it and look at him. The look method, and you look and you realize he doesn't even see you. Nothing is, he hasn't insulted you. It's not a rationalization, it's nothing, but to think bigger about, geez, maybe just this, that you're about to be mad. You should be mad, that's the way you're wired up to be mad. And suddenly you think bigger about how short life is, or, if you prefer, how long life is. Am I going to end up, is this going to be the beginning and the end for me, that I'm going to jump the counter, we get in a fight and I accidentally kill him, and I'll end up sitting on death row for 40 years, or maybe even get electrocuted, who knows what. I'm going to end up locked up because of this, and you think bigger, and the whole thing's changed. You know all that. All right, you've got to do that. You've got to push yourself to think bigger, to realize that you think small, that you do not use the look method, that we're always thinking small. That is, you think the way you're meant to think. You think within limitations, within the confines, but you, about anything, can think bigger. You simply can. It doesn't matter what, it doesn't matter how. Now, I'm not going into any more examples of it. But anything, and of course there is always some anything that apparently is tied to your automatic running thought processes. Whatever it is, you can think bigger. And you are making a serious error in so much as you can make a revolutionary error in your attempt to move this thing along if you're not striving continually to think bigger. That's enough said. Not how, not in any particular way, but to think bigger. One other thing I want to mention from Kyrute last week. He had one of his little comments that ended up something like this, that one has got to be as tough as a refried boot and almost as sensitive. That's not exactly what he said, but it's a little, I think, more direct than he put it. That is true. We're not talking about any sort of message to put out in the 3D world. But you have got to be as tough as a refried combat boot, or you're not going anywhere. But you've also got to be at least that sensitive. Think about it. It is the only way to properly, chemically protect yourself. Assuming, of course, that you have some real correct feel of what aspect of you deserves protecting by y'all. All the kiddies out of the room. Well, I didn't want the children here, that is, in your different cities, because I've got to tell you, I didn't want them to hear it, that Santa Claus was killed out on the Jersey Turnpike. I know how busy everyone should be here in Atlanta and in the other cities of living up to the increased responsibility you've got of bringing continually in more and more new people, informing them, holding them there to their own advantage and for your own profit. But a couple more, since we're getting far behind, of hobbies, erstwhile known as tasks, that I wish we had time to get into, that I know we don't right now, really, I know that. And so since we can't, at least I can mention them to you. One of them would have been, I was going to call it the Mr. Know-It-All. And it would have been a real good task. I'm not saying we'll never do it. We'll do it when we get time. It would be the kind of thing that we could do, I guess, if you wanted to feel like we were starting out easy, is do it amongst ourselves. Is I just pick out a name at random. I say, all right, you come up, and you're Mr. Know-It-All or Ms. Know-It-All, until further notice. We just do it for a few minutes, while. And you got to stand here. I just pick you out. And then we start having questions from the audience about anything. That you ask, can you explain to me, I've read books, but I cannot understand, how does really, in a way I can understand, how does an internal combustion engine work? And you say, well, I'm glad you asked, and you start talking. Or you say, what was, I'm unclear, I'm really unclear, what seemed to be the deciding factor? How did Italy actually become a unified state? When was it? It was something around the 20s or sometime. You jump around and say it was 1917 or thereabouts. And then you start. Or someone say, I have never, at times it worries me, I guess I'm not all that domestic anyway, but how in the hell do you get blood stains out of, like carpet or upholstery? And you say, glad you asked, right? There's several ways. And you just start telling. But you got to pull it off. Well, that's one I wish we had time for. Don't anyone try to do that. Don't try to use that in any way. If we were really going to use it as a task and we'd had more experience, I might try to expand it somewhere else. But that's just something I wish we had time for. Another one would be, by now, since I still love music, would be some of you write just for us, like prepared them for this activity, for the revolution. Our own personal gospel song with no restraints, just for us. That is, it can't have any reference to God, religion, good, evil, none of that stuff. None. Not even any kind of subtle reference or inference, none of that. And yet it's got to be our religious song, our gospel song, our hymn. I wish we had time for that. And something else. Several weeks ago I mentioned, not only here, but I looked in the camera with a few people out of town, that something should be done with these extraordinary tapes. And I, of course, was absolutely inferring that you people should be considering how to make use of them. And in other cities, I have found out since even last time that we were taping, as I suspected or had been indirectly told, that in other cities you are using the tapes, which I'm not finding fault with for you having done so. But when I said that something should be done with these tapes, with these extraordinary tapes, all these hundreds of hours, I also meant not just the tapes, but like written versions. If it gets down to transcripts or the form of a would-be book or just collection of the transcripts, something still you people should be considering, something to be done with it in that form, of this taken from the tapes into a readable written form. I'm telling you, something should be done. Now, that's really all I had to say, so you can let the other people, the kids back in the room, but don't you say a word about that wreck and ruin their holidays. And you people out of town, those of you who've asked, and even those who didn't ask, you got to share part of the blame on the possibility of some of you showing up. I want you to know that we have planned, we're going to have, and it may be a little out of the ordinary. We may do something a little out of the ordinary. For the, what dates did I pick out? The 27th? Is that right? The Saturday after Xmas and the Saturday after New Year's Adam Eve. So, some of you people better get down here, damn it, and share the weight. I mean, there's only so much fun that a limited number of people can have. Sometimes when some of you make me go ahead and have some kind of party, then you don't show up, and then I, personally, sometimes have to drink 4 or 5 extra beers or something. And I'm just sick of it. Bye.